The warning bells screamed through the bridge of the New Horizon as Captain Lee Hyunwoo stared at the massive alien ships surrounding his exploration vessel. The Keth Empire fleet had appeared from nowhere like ghosts made of metal and death, their sleek vessels cutting through space with the kind of precision that spoke of thousands of years of military evolution. Commander Veltaris of the lead Keth ship broadcast his message in perfect human language, though his voice carried the cold efficiency of a machine designed only for war. Human vessel, you are now property of the Keth Empire. Surrender immediately and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in your complete destruction. Hyunwoo looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew and saw fear mixed with something else, something that made him smile despite their impossible situation. Engineer Kim So-young was already running calculations on her console, while Lieutenant Park Dong-hyun monitored the alien ships with the intensity of a predator studying its prey. The Keith had made one critical error in their assessment of humanity. They assumed humans would act rationally when faced with overwhelming force. Sir, So-young said quietly, their formation is perfect for a military engagement, but they have positioned themselves assuming we will try to escape or fight conventionally. Hyunwoo nodded as an idea began forming in his mind. An idea so completely insane that it just might work. Options, he asked his crew. We could surrender, Dong-hyun said without enthusiasm. They clearly have superior firepower and technology. We could try to run, added Navigator Choi Min-ho. But their ships are faster and they have us surrounded. So-young looked up from her console with a grin that would have made a pirate proud. Or we could ram them. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems and the distant sound of alien vessels moving into tighter formation. Explain. Hyunwoo said, our fusion drive puts out enough energy to power a small city. So, Young continued, if we overload it and use the ship itself as a projectile, we could take out their flagship and probably 2 or 3 other vessels. That would kill us all. Choi pointed out, yes, it would. So Young agreed cheerfully. Hyunwoo considered this for exactly 3 seconds before making his decision. Dong-hyun opened a channel to the Keth fleet. The lieutenant activated communications and nodded. This is Captain Lee Hyunwoo of the human vessel New Horizon, he began. We have considered your generous offer of surrender. Veltaris responded immediately. You have made the rational choice. Human. Prepare for boarding. Actually, we have decided to decline. Hyunwoo continued, if you want our ship, you can have the pieces. The alien commander paused, clearly confused by this response. You cannot be serious, human. You are completely outgunned and outnumbered. Surrender is your only logical option. Logic is overrated. Hyunwoo replied. So-young began fusion drive overload, all power to engines. The ship began to vibrate as its fusion reactor was pushed far beyond safe parameters. On the Keth flagship, Veltaris watched in disbelief as the human vessel began accelerating directly toward his position. They are moving toward us, his tactical officer reported with confusion, evident in his voice. I can see that. Veltaris snapped. Why are they not attempting to escape? Sir, their fusion signature is increasing beyond normal operational parameters. Are they having engine problems? No, sir, it appears to be intentional. Veltaris stared at the approaching human ship as understanding slowly dawned on him. They are going to ram us, he said quietly. That is impossible, sir. No rational species would destroy their own vessel when negotiation remains an option. Apparently, humans are not rational. Veltaris replied. On the New Horizon. Hyunwoo watched the Keth ships with satisfaction as they began breaking formation. They are moving away from us, sir. Dong-hyun reported. Predictable. So-young laughed. They spent so much time calculating the logical response they never considered the illogical. 1. The human ship continued its acceleration toward the Keth flagship, even as the alien vessels scrambled to get out of its path. This is Veltaris to human vessel. You must stop this madness immediately. Madness, Hyunwoo mused. I prefer to think of it as creative problem-solving. The Keth commander was now faced with an impossible choice. He could destroy the human ship, But that would accomplish nothing since they were already planning to die, or he could retreat and lose face in front of his entire fleet. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "we cannot target them effectively without risk to our own ships. They are too close. All vessels retreat to safe distance," Veltaris ordered. The Keth fleet began pulling back as the New Horizon continued its suicidal charge. "Sir," So Young called out, "We are at minimum safe distance for fusion detonation. Cut the overload," Hyun-woo ordered. Resume normal thrust. The ship stopped shaking as its engines returned to normal operation. "This is Captain Lee Hyun-woo to Keth Fleet," he broadcast. "We have demonstrated our commitment to this course of action. Do you wish to continue?" Veltaris looked at his tactical display showing his scattered fleet and the small human vessel that had just forced an entire battle group to retreat. "Human captain," he said carefully. "What do you want?" "We want you to leave us alone." Hyun-woo replied simply, "You would have died." "Yes, but so would many of you, and for what?" "One small exploration ship." The Keth commander realized he was dealing with something completely outside his military training. An enemy willing to accept total loss, to deny victory to their opponents. "This is not overhuman. We hope not," Hyun-woo grinned. It was just getting interesting. The Keth fleet withdrew to a safe distance as the New Horizon continued on its original course. Sir Dong-hyun asked, "What if they come back with more ships?" "Then we will think of something else," Hyun-woo replied. "Humans are good at that." So Young was already back at her console running new calculations. "Actually, sir, I have been thinking about our mining charges." "What about them?" "Well, if we modified them for space deployment and added some basic guidance systems." Hyun-woo looked at his engineer with growing appreciation for human creativity. Meanwhile, on the Keth flagship, Veltaris composed his report to the Empire with growing unease. "The humans appear to be collectively insane," he wrote. "They respond to superior force with increased aggression rather than submission. They seem willing to accept total destruction rather than surrender, and they appear to enjoy the prospect of mutual annihilation." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "I recommend extreme caution in future encounters with this species. Traditional military doctrine may be insufficient against an enemy that does not value its own survival above victory." The report was transmitted across the galaxy, carrying with it the first warning that humanity was unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. Back on the New Horizon, the crew celebrated their unlikely victory with coffee and rations. "So what happens now?" Choi asked. "Now we continue exploring," Hyun-woo replied, "and we make sure everyone knows that humans do not make easy prey." "Think they will be back?" "Probably, but next time they will bring friends." "Good." So Young grinned. "I love a challenge." The small human ship continued deeper into space, carrying with it the seeds of a reputation that would reshape galactic civilization. Unknown to the crew of the New Horizon, their encounter had been recorded and transmitted throughout the Keth Empire, and beyond species across the galaxy would soon learn the first rule of human warfare: never assume they are rational. 6 months after the New Horizon incident, the Federation decided humanity needed a proper lesson in galactic politics. General Rathkor of the Axian Republic commanded the blockade fleet surrounding the human colony on Kepler 442b with the confidence of someone who had never lost a siege. The planet held 50,000 human colonists who had been farming and mining for 3 years, building what they called New Sol in the fertile valleys of the northern continent. Rathkor studied his tactical display with satisfaction, showing the perfect orbital positions of his vessels. No ship could leave the planet without running his blockade, and no supplies could reach the surface. "How long do you estimate before surrender?" asked his aide. "Commander Zixtal's standard siege doctrine suggests 2 weeks maximum," Rathkor replied. "Possibly less if they are rational about their situation." The general had clearly not been paying attention to recent intelligence reports about human behavior. On the planet's surface, colony administrator Yoon Ji-hai received the Federation ultimatum with something approaching amusement. "They want us to surrender and accept relocation to a designated reservation world," she announced to her council. "What did you tell them?" asked Dr. Choi Min-ho, the colony's xenobiologist. I told them we would consider their offer, Ji-hai replied, and then I activated Protocol Mockingbird. The council members grinned as they understood what this meant. Protocol Mockingbird was a contingency plan developed after studying Federation siege tactics. It was designed to exploit the logical assumptions their enemies made about human behavior. All department heads implement festival protocols immediately, Ji-hai ordered. I want every food store opened and every entertainment system activated within. Ours New Sol transformed from a worried colony under siege into what appeared to be the galaxy's largest party. The colonists began consuming their emergency food supplies at 10 times the normal rate, while music echoed through the streets and children played games in the town squares. Dr. Choi Min-ho took charge of broadcasting operations, ensuring that every moment of their celebration was transmitted directly to the blockading fleet. This is Dr. Choi Min-ho of New Sol Colony to Federation. Blockade Force, he announced cheerfully. We want to thank you for giving us an excuse to throw the best party in colonial history. On the flagship, Rathkor stared at his communications screen in bewilderment as images of dancing humans filled the display. Sir Zixtel reported. They appear to be celebrating our blockade. That makes no logical sense. The general replied. They should be rationing supplies and preparing for negotiation. Should we jam their transmission, sir? No, let them. Waste their power on foolishness, it will only shorten the siege. But as the hours passed, the human celebration only grew larger and more elaborate. Engineers had rigged massive sound systems that could be heard from orbit while the colonists organized competitions and festivals that consumed vast quantities of food and resources. Sir, the tactical officer reported, our calculations show they are consuming supplies at an unsustainable rate. Good then, they will surrender sooner. Actually, sir, they will be dead sooner. Rathkor paused as this distinction sank in. Explain. At current consumption rates, they have perhaps 3 days of food remaining. After that, they will begin starving to death. Then they will surrender before that point. Sir Zixtal interjected, these are humans we are dealing with. The general was beginning to understand that human psychology did not conform to standard. Models on the planet Ji-hai addressed her colonists as the second day of festivities reached its peak. Citizens of New Sol, she announced, our guests in orbit seem confused by our hospitality. The crowd cheered and someone shouted, maybe they are shy. Perhaps we should invite them to join us. Ji-hai continued. The colonists roared their approval as the administrator continued, Dr. Choi, please send our invitation. This is New Sol Colony to Federation blockade. Choi broadcast, we are having such a wonderful time we thought you might like to join us. We have plenty of food and drink, though admittedly not for very long. We realize you came here to capture a working colony, but since we would rather die happy than live as prisoners, we decided to spend everything we have on one last celebration. Of course, if you want to keep us alive for labor purposes, you will have to feed us yourselves since we will have consumed all our supplies by tomorrow evening. The transmission ended with the sound of human laughter and music. Rathkor felt the first stirrings of doubt about his mission, sir. His intelligence officer reported, we are receiving similar transmissions from human colonies throughout the sector. What do you mean similar? They are all celebrating our various blockades, sir. The humans appear to be treating military siege as some sort of festival opportunity. The general realized he was not dealing with an isolated incident, but a coordinated response on New Sol. The third day of celebration reached its climax as the ER colonists consumed the last of their food stores in a massive feast that could be seen from space. Citizens, Ji-hai announced, tomorrow we begin our final phase. The colonists cheered, though they all understood what final phase meant. Dr. Choi Min-ho had been working with the colony's engineers on a special project that would serve as their closing ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, I present the New Sol Volunteer Space Program. The crowd erupted as they saw the modified escape pods lined up at the spaceport. Each pod has been equipped with mining charges and basic guidance systems, Chief Engineer Han Bo-ra explained. Volunteers will pilot these pods directly at Federation vessels. It is not a suicide mission, she continued, with typical human logic. It is a delivery system for high explosives that happens to require personal transportation. Hundreds of colonists volunteered immediately. Rathkor watched in horror as the first wave of escape pods launched from the planet. Surface, sir. The humans are launching some sort of attack, Zixtal reported. Those are civilian escape pods, the tactical officer added, but they appear to be heading directly for our ships. Are they evacuating? No, sir. Our scans show each pod contains mining explosives and a single human pilot. The general stared at his display as dozens of small pods accelerated toward his fleet. They are sending suicide troops, he whispered. Sir, the lead pod is broadcasting. Put it on screen. A young human woman appeared on the display, grinning wildly as her pod approached the nearest Federation vessel. This is volunteer pilot Kim Sun-hee of New Seoul, she announced. I want you to know this is not about hatred or revenge. Then why are you doing this? Rathkor found himself asking. Because it seemed like fun, she replied cheerfully. And because someone needs to deliver these party favors, her pod struck the Federation ship's shields and detonated in a brilliant explosion that damaged the vessels. Sensor array more pods followed each pilot, laughing or singing as they approached their targets. Sir, we must retreat, Zixtal urged. They are using human pilots as guided weapons, but they are killing themselves. Yes, sir, and they seem to be enjoying it. Rathkor gave the order to retreat. As more escape pods launched from the planet, the siege of New Seoul had lasted exactly 3 days, and ended with the Federation fleet withdrawing to a safe distance while the human colonists celebrated their victory by throwing an even bigger party. This is Colony Administrator Yoon Ji-hee to General Rathkor, came the transmission from the planet. We want to thank you for the most exciting 3 days in our colony's history. You are all completely insane, the general replied. Thank you, Ji-hee responded. We consider that a compliment. How do you expect to survive without supplies? Oh, we have plenty of supplies, she laughed. We only consumed our excess stores. We have months of rations remaining plus our farming and manufacturing capacity. You lied about running out of food. We prefer to call it creative truth. Besides, you never asked if we were telling the truth, you just assumed we would behave rationally, Rathkor realized he had been completely outmaneuvered by an enemy that refused to follow basic military logic. His report to Federation Command would become required reading at military academies throughout the galaxy. The humans have weaponized their own apparent irrationality, he wrote. They appear willing to accept total destruction rather than surrender, and they seem to derive pleasure from mutually assured destruction. Traditional siege warfare is ineffective against an enemy that celebrates your attempts to starve them and responds to blockade with festival. I recommend immediate reassessment of all human-related military strategies. The report concluded with a note that would haunt Federation military planners for years to come. The humans won this engagement not through superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but by refusing to behave like a rational enemy. They have turned siege warfare into a form of entertainment. Back on New Seoul, the colonists were already planning their next festival. The Federation Grand Armada assembled near Tau Ceti, with the largest fleet in galactic history, while Admiral No Sung-min watched from the bridge of his flagship, knowing he was about to command the most hopeless battle humanity had ever faced supreme. Admiral Kek Tholos of the Federation led 800 warships against humanity's hastily assembled defense force of 40 vessels that included converted cargo haulers and civilian craft pressed into military service. The human fleet looked pathetic compared to the Federation Armada, but Sung-min smiled as he reviewed his battle plans because sometimes looking weak was the greatest strength of all. Sir, reported Captain Bae Yun-ji from her converted freighter, Lucky Dragon, Federation forces are moving into standard envelopment formation. Predictable. Sung-min replied, they are going to surround us and demand surrender. What are your orders, sir? Asked fighter pilot Seo Ta-yang, whose squadron flew modified civilian shuttles armed with mining charges. Pattern chaos. Sung-min announced, all ships operate independently effective immediately. The human fleet immediately broke apart as each vessel began following its own tactical plan. Chief Engineer Han Bo-ra aboard the research Vessel Starwalker had been working on something special for this moment, sir, she reported. Fusion reactor modification complete. We can achieve stellar ignition on command. Understood, Sungmin replied. Hold that in reserve. Kekatholos watched the human fleet disperse with growing confusion. Tactical analysis, he demanded from his staff. Sir, the human formation has completely collapsed, reported analyst Morden. They appear to have lost all command coordination. Are they retreating? No, sir. They are moving in random directions with no apparent strategic purpose. Then they have already been defeated, Kekatholos declared. Transmit surrender terms. Human fleet. This is Supreme Admiral Kekatholos. You are completely surrounded and outnumbered 20-1. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift. Sungmin received the transmission with amusement. This is Admiral No Sungmin to Federation Fleet. He replied. Thank you for the tactical update. We were wondering how badly outnumbered we were. Then you will surrender. Actually, we were hoping you might surrender to us. The Federation bridge fell silent as officers tried to process this response. You cannot be serious, human. You have 40 ships against our 800. Numbers are overrated, Sungmin replied. Besides, we brought friends. As if on cue, the asteroid field around them began moving as hundreds of hidden human ships emerged from concealment. Contact, screamed the Federation sensor operator. Multiple vessels, decloak bearing all directions. But Kekatholos quickly realized these were not warships but civilian craft and mining vessels. Those are not military vessels, he announced. They pose no threat. He was about to learn why assumptions about humans were always dangerous. Captain Bei Yunji aboard Lucky Dragon had been waiting for this moment, all power to engines. She ordered her crew, ramming speed. The converted freighter accelerated toward the nearest Federation dreadnought while its captain broadcast cheerfully to her crew. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We are now approaching our final destination. Please ensure all explosive charges are properly secured. The Federation dreadnought tried to target the approaching freighter, but Yunji had anticipated this, evasive maneuvers. She called out as Lucky Dragon began spinning wildly while maintaining its collision course. The ship's modifications allowed it to change direction unpredictably, making it impossible to target effectively, sir. The dreadnought's tactical officer reported, We cannot achieve weapons lock. The freighter is moving too erratically. Then use area bombardment. But the human ship was already too close and moving too fast. Lucky Dragon struck the dreadnought's engine section and detonated in a massive explosion that crippled the larger vessel. Direct hit. Yunji broadcast just before impact. It has been an honor serving with you all. Throughout the battle zone, similar scenes played out as human vessels threw themselves at Federation ships with reckless abandon. Seo Taeyang led his fighter squadron against a Federation carrier group using tactics that would have been considered suicidal by any rational military force. Phoenix Squadron. This is your wing commander, he announced. Remember, we are not trying to survive this engagement, we are trying to make it expensive for them. His fighters attacked the carrier from multiple directions at once with no coordination or formation. Flying. The Federation point defense systems were designed to counter organized attacks but had trouble tracking fighters that seemed to be flying completely at random. Target the lead fighter, ordered the carrier's defense coordinator. Sir, we cannot identify a lead fighter. They all appear to be acting independently. Taeyang used his damaged interceptor to guide a Federation missile back toward its launch ship by flying directly at the carrier while the missile followed him. At the last second, he ejected from his fighter, letting the missile strike the carrier's hangar bay, while he drifted away in his escape pod. Missile impact on hangar deck, reported the carrier's damage control officer. We have secondary explosions throughout the fighter bay. Meanwhile, Han Bo-Ra was preparing her ultimate surprise, Starwalker to Admiral Sung-min. She transmitted, Fusion reactor, critical mass achieved. Wait for my signal, Sung-min replied, as he watched the battle develop. The Federation forces were taking heavy casualties, but they still had overwhelming numerical superiority. Kekatholos was learning that numerical advantage meant nothing when your enemy refused to follow basic military logic. Sir Morden reported frantically. Tactical. Projections are changing faster than we can calculate them. What do you mean? The humans keep doing things that should not work but somehow do work. Our battle computers cannot predict their next actions. They are just throwing their lives away randomly. Yes, sir, but they are taking our ships with them. A human mining vessel had just used its ore processing equipment to cut through a Federation cruiser's hull while both ships were destroyed in the process. Another human ship had somehow managed to use a tractor beam to pull two Federation vessels into each other, causing a massive collision, sir. The communications officer reported, "We are receiving a transmission from the human research vessel. Put it on screen." Hanbora appeared on the display, standing on what was obviously the bridge of a ship about to explode. "This is Chief Engineer Hanbora of the research vessel Star." "Walker," she announced cheerfully. "I wanted to personally thank you for providing such an excellent target." "What target?" Kek demanded. "Your fleet, of course," she replied. "You positioned yourselves perfectly for what we call a stellar ignition event." The Supreme Admiral felt cold fear as he realized what she meant. "You cannot detonate a star." "Actually, we can." Hanbora grinned. "We have been feeding controlled solar flares into this system star for months. All it needs now is one final push." She held up a detonation device. "The beauty of stellar weapons is that they affect everyone equally. Your ships and ours will all be destroyed, but our families are safely away from here while yours." She shrugged, as if discussing the weather. "Your families will never see you again either way." Starwalker's fusion reactor detonated in a brilliant flash that created an artificial star in the middle of the battle zone. The explosion blinded half the Federation fleet and sent electromagnetic pulses through their systems. In the chaos that followed, human ships pressed their attack with renewed fury. Sungmin watched his fleet sacrifice itself, ship by ship, while taking a terrible toll on the enemy. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we have lost 60% of our vessels." "And how many have they lost?" "Approximately 40%, sir." "Excellent, we are winning." This statement confused everyone on the bridge until they realized what their admiral meant. The Federation had lost more ships in absolute numbers, even though they still had numerical superiority. More importantly, they had lost something far more valuable than ships, sir. The sensor operator reported, "Federation forces are withdrawing." Kek had realized that victory would cost him his entire fleet. Even if he won this battle, the humans had shown they would make any victory so expensive it became meaningless. "All vessels retreat to safe distance," he ordered. "Sir, we still outnumber them." "Numbers mean nothing against an enemy that treats mutual destruction as victory," the Supreme Admiral replied. Sung Min watched the Federation fleet withdraw and opened communications. "Supreme Admiral Kek, this is Admiral No Sung Min," he transmitted. "What, do you want human?" "I wanted to congratulate you on your tactical decision," Sung Min replied. "Very rational of you. You have lost this battle." "Have we?" Sung Min asked. "Because from where I sit, it looks like you are retreating. This is not over." "We certainly hope not." Sung Min grinned. "This was the most fun we have had in months." The Battle of the Broken Fleet entered military history as the engagement where a numerically inferior force achieved strategic victory through tactical insanity. Federation military academies would study the battle for centuries, trying to understand how chaos could defeat order. The human survivors limped back to their bases, carrying with them a reputation that would precede them throughout the galaxy. They had proven that humanity could not be defeated through conventional warfare. Because they refused to define victory in conventional terms, word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy, carrying with it a simple message. The Federation Council voted unanimously for Final Solution Protocol after months of debate about the human problem, with Chancellor Vex Mirren casting the deciding vote that would authorize complete human extinction. "These creatures cannot be allowed to spread their tactical methods to other species," he declared to the assembled representatives of 47 galactic civilizations. "Their approach to warfare threatens the very foundation of rational military doctrine." The Planet Killer Fleet. that assembled in deep space was the largest military force in galactic history, with enough firepower to crack worlds and sterilize entire star systems. Vexmiran commanded the fleet personally from his flagship Eternal Judgment because he wanted to witness humanity's final defeat with his own eyes. The fleet approached Earth's solar system expecting to find desperate humans preparing for a last stand. Instead, they found President Kim Jae-won broadcasting to the entire galaxy. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began with the casual tone of someone discussing weekend plans. "Humanity faces extinction today, and we could surrender or negotiate. But where would be the fun in that?" The transmission reached every inhabited world in the galaxy. As human communication networks had been secretly expanded over the past year, we have prepared a small farewell gift for our friends in the Federation. Jae-won continued, "Something we call the Doomsday Clock Protocol." Vexmiran watched the transmission with growing unease because human gifts were never what they seemed. "Chancellor," his tactical officer reported, "we are detecting massive energy fluctuations from the system's star." "Explain, sir. It appears the humans have been conducting controlled solar destabilization experiments." Chief Scientist Lee Yeon-soo appeared on the galactic broadcast from her laboratory deep within Earth's moon. "For the past 2 years, we have been using gravity manipulation to create instabilities in our sun," she explained cheerfully. "It turns out that stellar engineering is much easier than anyone thought." She gestured to a display showing the sun's internal structure. "We have created a cascade effect that will cause our star to go supernova in approximately 6 hours," she continued. "The explosion will destroy everything within 12 light years, including your own planet." Vexmiran transmitted to Earth. "Yes, that is rather the point," Jae-won replied. "If we cannot have our home, then nobody gets to have this entire region of space. You are bluffing humans. No species would destroy their own star." Military Coordinator Oh Jin-wook joined the broadcast from Earth's Defense Command Center. "Chancellor Vexmiran, let me introduce you to human strategic thinking," he said with a grin. "We have calculated that your fleet represents approximately 30% of Federation military strength. When our sun explodes, it will destroy your entire fleet along with our solar system and several nearby colonies. The economic cost of replacing your losses will cripple the Federation for decades. Meanwhile, we have already evacuated our essential personnel and industrial capacity to hidden bases throughout the galaxy." Defense Minister Park Young-mi appeared next holding what looked like a simple remote control device. "We have also taken the liberty of broadcasting our complete tactical database to every oppressed species in the galaxy," she announced. "Win or lose, you will be fighting human-style warfare for the next 1,000 years. The Corvin rebels now know how to turn cargo ships into guided missiles. The Zethian resistance has learned to weaponize civilian festivals. The hegemony slaves understand how to make surrender more expensive than victory." Vexmiran realized the humans had turned their extinction into a weapon against the entire Federation. "You cannot be serious about destroying your own star, Chancellor," came another voice as cultural attaché Jung So-min joined the broadcast. "Let me share something about human psychology. We are the species that invented the concept of mutually assured destruction as a peacekeeping strategy. We spent centuries threatening to destroy our own planet, rather than let our enemies win. Solar engineering is just the logical next step." The Chancellor looked at his fleet deployment and calculated the losses. If the humans were telling the truth, even if they won this battle, they would lose so many ships that the Federation would be vulnerable to every rebel group and hostile neighbor in the galaxy. "Sir," his science officer reported, "stellar analysis confirms human claims. The star is showing signs of controlled instability. How long do we have?" "If they trigger the cascade now, approximately 4 hours before we could retreat to minimum safe distance." President Jae-won appeared again on the galactic broadcast. "Chancellor, we are prepared to begin stellar ignition immediately," he announced, "unless you would like to discuss alternative arrangements." "What alternatives?" "Complete withdrawal of Federation forces from human space and recognition of human sovereignty over our colonial territories." "That is impossible. The Council will never agree." "Then I guess we all die together." Jae-won shrugged. "So-min, would you like to do the honors?" Defense Minister Park held up her detonation device as if she was about to trigger humanity's final gambit. Wait. Vex Mirren transmitted desperately. The human leadership looked disappointed. Chancellor, are you requesting negotiation? Oh Jinwook asked. I am requesting that you not destroy half the galaxy. That depends entirely on your willingness to be reasonable, Jaewon replied. The next 6 hours saw the most intensive diplomatic negotiations in galactic history as the Federation Council debated whether to accept human terms or risk mutual annihilation. Every few minutes Park would announce another step in the stellar destabilization process. Phase 1 complete. She would report, star core temperature increasing beyond normal parameters. Phase 2 initiated, came later. Solar magnetic field destabilization, beginning. Phase 3 active. She announced cheerfully, cascade effect now irreversible without our intervention. Throughout the galaxy, other species watched the negotiations with fascination as humanity held an entire interstellar empire hostage, with nothing but their own willingness to commit cosmic suicide. The Corvin rebels began broadcasting their own threats of stellar engineering. The Zethian resistance announced they were preparing to detonate their planet's core if the Federation did not grant them independence. Even peaceful species began reconsidering their relationship with an empire that could drive its enemies to such desperate measures. Vex Mirren found himself negotiating not just for human surrender, but for the stability of the entire Federation. The humans have created a precedent, he reported to the Council. If we destroy them, other species will adopt their tactics. We could face stellar weapons in every rebel system. Every independence movement will threaten mutual annihilation. The humans have weaponized the concept of acceptable losses. The Council voted to accept human terms just 2 hours before the point of no return. This is Chancellor Vex Mirren to President Jaewon. He transmitted, the Federation accepts your proposals. Excellent. Jaewon replied, So Min, please reverse the stellar cascade. Already done, sir. Park announced. Our star will return to normal parameters within 12 hours. The Chancellor stared at his display in disbelief. You can reverse the process. Of course we can. Lee Yan-su laughed. What kind of engineers would we be if we built a doomsday device without a safety switch? You were never going to destroy your star. We were absolutely prepared to destroy our star, Jaewon corrected, but we preferred negotiation. The beauty of stellar weapons is that they give everyone an incentive to be reasonable. Vex Mirren realized he had been completely outmaneuvered by an enemy that had turned their own potential extinction into a diplomatic tool. How long have you been planning this? Since the moment we realized the Federation would eventually try to exterminate us. Oh Jinwook replied, We spent 3 years preparing for this conversation. The hardest part was not laughing during your invasion speech. The Federation fleet withdrew from the solar system, having achieved the most expensive military victory in galactic history. They had successfully forced humanity to reveal their doomsday weapon, thereby ensuring that every future conflict would involve the threat of stellar engineering. The human strategy had been brilliantly simple. Make victory so expensive that negotiation becomes the only rational option. Then make sure everyone in the galaxy knows exactly how to build their own doomsday device park. Young Mai filed her final report from Earth's Defense Command. Phase 4 of the Doomsday Clock Protocol is now complete, she wrote. The galaxy now understands that extinction is always an option. No species will attempt to completely destroy another knowing that the target might take half the galaxy with them. We have achieved peace through the threat of mutual cosmic suicide. It is perhaps the most human solution possible. 6 months after the Doomsday Clock incident, Ambassador Kang Hyejin sat at the Galactic Council table as humanity's first official representative, watching alien diplomats who still seemed nervous about having humans in the same room. The Federation had restructured their entire military doctrine around a single principle that was now taught at every academy in the galaxy. Never assume humans will act rationally. Counselor Yarthek of the Hegemony was explaining the new strategic reality to a gathering of military commanders from across the galaxy. The humans have fundamentally changed warfare by proving that any sufficiently desperate enemy can threaten mutual destruction. He said carefully, traditional conquest is no longer viable. When the target species might decide to take everyone with them, we must assume that every species now has access to human tactical methods. Ambassador Kang listened with satisfaction as the alien military leaders struggled to adapt to a galaxy where humans had made conventional warfare obsolete. Ambassador Kang Yarthek continued, "Perhaps you could explain human strategic philosophy to our commanders." Kang stood and addressed the assembly with the casual confidence that had become humanity's trademark. "The secret to human warfare is very simple," she began. "We have no secret." The alien officers looked confused. "We win by refusing to accept the definitions of victory and defeat that our enemies use. If you define victory as destroying our military, we will use civilian vessels as weapons. If you define victory as occupying our territory, we will make that territory uninhabitable. If you define victory as our extinction, we will make extinction too expensive to achieve. We do not win by being stronger or smarter than our enemies. We win by changing what winning means." War Studies professor An Sung-ho had established the Human Warfare Institute on the neutral world of Kepler Station, where officers from throughout the galaxy came to study humanity's approach to conflict. His lectures were always packed with students trying to understand how a species could weaponize its own apparent insanity. Today, we will discuss the fundamental principle underlying all human military strategy, he announced to his class of Federation officers. Humans treat warfare as a form of problem-solving rather than a competition. When faced with superior enemy forces, they do not ask how can we defeat them. They ask how can we make defeating us not worth the effort? A Keth officer raised his hand. "Professor, how do we defend against such tactics?" "You do not." An replied simply, "You make sure humans never want to use them against you. The best defense against human warfare is to make humans your allies." Cultural attaché Jung So-min was busy establishing the first human colonies in Federation space under strict agreements that guaranteed complete autonomy. No alien government wanted to be responsible for governing a species that might decide to celebrate administrative disputes with stellar fireworks. "The colonies are thriving," she reported to Earth's government, "mainly because nobody wants to interfere with anything we do. Local authorities give us a very wide berth." President Kim Jae-won reviewed the reports with amusement. "How are our diplomatic relations?" "Excellent." So-min replied, "Everyone is very polite and very careful not to annoy us." They have finally learned the first rule of dealing with humans, which is, do not give humans a reason to be creative. Fleet Admiral Im Dong-won was reviewing expansion reports from the outer colonies where human settlements were spreading rapidly through previously contested regions. Every new human colony established the same basic defense protocol: make conquest more expensive than coexistence. The colonies were designed to be completely self-sufficient but also rigged for total destruction at a moment's notice. Any invading force would capture nothing but wreckage and radioactive debris, sir. His aide reported, "The Corvan Republic has requested human advisors for their independence negotiations. They want to learn stellar engineering." "Probably," Im replied. "Send them Professor An and a full technical team." "Sir, should we be teaching other species our weapons technology? The more species that understand human methods, the safer the galaxy becomes." Im explained, "Nobody will risk aggressive warfare when every potential target might respond with mutual annihilation." Xenopsychologist Ryu Min-jung published her groundbreaking paper on human military psychology from her research station orbiting New Seoul. The illogical logic of human warfare became required reading at military academies throughout the galaxy. Her conclusion revolutionized strategic thinking across dozens of civilizations. "Humans do not win battles by being superior warriors," she wrote. "They win by refusing to fight the battles their enemies want to fight. When faced with overwhelming force, they do not ask how to resist. They ask how to make resistance irrelevant. Human victory is achieved not through defeating enemies, but through making enmity itself irrational. The paper included detailed analysis of every major human military engagement from first contact through the Doomsday Clock incident. In every case, she noted, human success resulted from their willingness to accept outcomes that other species would consider defeat. They turned retreat into attack, surrender into negotiation, and extinction into diplomacy. They have weaponized their own apparent weakness. The Federation Military Academy on Centauri Prime now included mandatory courses on human tactical methods. Students learned to identify human psychological patterns and how to avoid triggering human defensive responses. The most important lesson was always the same. Never corner humans because they might decide being cornered is an opportunity. 5 years after first contact, humanity had become the unofficial peacekeepers of the galaxy. Not through military conquest, but through the simple expedient of making war too risky for anyone to attempt. Ambassador Kang received daily reports of conflicts being resolved through negotiation because both sides feared that escalation might attract human attention. Ambassador, her aide reported, the Hegemony and the Free Worlds Alliance have reached agreement in their territorial dispute. They specifically requested that no humans be involved in enforcement. They preferred to handle compliance themselves rather than risk having us solve their problems creatively. Kang smiled as she realized how completely humanity had changed galactic civilization. They had not conquered the galaxy, they had convinced the galaxy to conquer itself through the fear of human problem-solving. The final entry in her diplomatic log summarized humanity's transformation from unknown species to galactic power. Humanity achieved dominance not through superior technology or military might, but through superior unpredictability. We convinced every other species that conflict with humans was too dangerous to risk, not because we are unbeatable, but because beating us would require accepting losses that make victory meaningless. We have created a galaxy where peace is the only rational option. It is perhaps the most human achievement possible. We saved civilization by threatening to destroy it. As Ambassador Kang looked out at the stars from her office on Galactic Council Station, she reflected on humanity's journey from first contact to galactic citizenship. They had started as explorers seeking knowledge and trade. They had become the galaxy's teachers of a simple but revolutionary concept. Sometimes the best way to win is to make sure nobody wants to fight. The galaxy had learned the first rule of human warfare the hard way. Never assume humans are rational, but they had also learned something even more important. Sometimes irrationality is the most rational response of all. Humanity had not just survived first contact with galactic civilization, they had improved it.